What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the upcoming slate of Assassin's Creed games. Now, we know there's roughly like 10 or so in the next 5 years. You can debate whether that's too much, and we might do a little of that in this video, but I want to look at 5 of them because 5 of them actually are somewhat confirmed, right? In fact, I think 4 of the 5 are all but confirmed. So I brought in a good friend of the channel, a good friend of mine, and also a person who covers Assassin's Creed on his channels, Indegenerate Jay. Welcome back to the channel. I'll leave his links in the description if you guys want to check it out. I thought this would be a good collab opportunity for us because he's probably more passionate about Assassin's Creed than I am. So we're going to go through kind of rapid fire style the next 5 really Assassin's Creed games, not necessarily in order, although we might go in order. I haven't decided yet, and we'll just see how it goes. So Jay, I'm going to have you started off pretty hot, pretty we're going to go kind of directly at it here. Assassin's Creed Shadows. Just kind of tell me, what you're thinking, and for this being the pioneer, the first of these 10 Assassin's Creed games, how do you think that's going to go?
Well, first off, they've done a horrible job marketing this game.
Yeah.
Now, whether you love the game and you are, Yazake fan 32 in the comments, or you're very upset about this game, no matter where you fall, I think it's very clear that Ubisoft has done just a bad job. I was actually looking at this the other day. A company had to delist a toy about this game because there was symbolism in the background that was actually very reminiscent to a very, very serious picture taken after the atomic bombings in World War II. So basically, they don't seem to understand a lot of the imagery that's very important to Japan. I would argue this. I've said before in my videos, I think some of the responses to this are overblown. I've seen people being actually racist. I've seen people being actually very evil, like very, very mean-spirited about things around this game. I've also seen people who are justifiably annoyed about a lot of things around this game. And I think that this game is probably the most contentious Assassin's Creed launch so far that I've ever seen, and it's not even out. I think that's not a great foot to step out forward on, whether the game is a masterpiece somehow and Ubisoft comes out here and delivers the best game ever made, which they won't, but let's say they do, or it's terrible. That's a bad foot to start on. And you're telling me that they're making 10 of these. And your first impression is made everyone mad. That's already just not a good start.
I can agree with that. I think the optimistic side of me, not necessarily for Shadows, but just kind of like the slate. I think I've said this maybe on Twitter or in just other videos. The one defense I'll have for them in general with the 10 games is at least this first 5, which again, we're going to go through the other 4. They are different. They really, at least just in wording and what we kind of know about them, these are definitely going to be different experiences from each other. And I think, one of them could kill the others, right? Shadows just being bad or being so divisive as it is, right, can really be a problem going forward. But I still think it's probably too much. I don't think 10 games in 5 years is really good, or maybe it's even 4 years. I don't actually even remember the length. That's probably overkill. But if there are going to be all these different experiences, I guess I look at it as they have more shots to hit, right? Not even more shots to miss, because if you miss 4 of the 10, you still get 6 really good games. You know what I mean? Just that kind of optimistic view that I try to bring. I feel like that could work, and honestly, I think you're going to see that as we go through this video. So yeah, I mean, I agree with Jay. For Shadows, it's I'm getting it, most likely. It's just a game. I don't know. The most recent Assassin's Creed games just have never really captured me all that much, so I feel like it's almost a outsider's perspective, Origins on. But I don't know. It's I definitely want to see how it does. I want to see the actual quality, because we've had so much of the controversy, and a lot of it's justified, right? Some of it's not, but there's a good amount there that I feel like it can anger people, and I just feel all right, we have that, and then now I want to see, because the game might just be average, you know what I mean? And that's not that great either, and we just have to wait till the game comes out. So number 2, in terms of, I don't even know if I would call this the big ones, because this is Hexe, and this game is more pitched, as we've heard through leaks, This is the one that's like not even Assassin's Creed, right? This is a witch hunt. This is very different. I'm actually reading on this article I'm at right now, a very different type of Assassin's Creed game. I think the rumors were like this is only going to be like a 10, 15 hour thing. So we're not talking 100 hours. We're not talking Odyssey, Valhalla. We're talking about this might actually confuse people that it's not even an Assassin's Creed game to begin with, but it's labeled, as such. So myself personally, just really fast, and I'll let Jay go. I love it. I actually really, this is the one I'm excited for. Like above all else, this is the one I think has the most potential. It's the most different. It's the most, I don't know, just I think this one might catch people off guard. And this one's probably coming out the end of next year, maybe early 2026, after people might be so mad at Shadows, right? So it's like it's going to come out at a negative point in the fan base's history, and then like it's going to have to contend with that, and then it might surprise them. You know what I mean? So what do you think about that game?
This is one where I think that it could be either helped or hurt by having Assassin's Creed on the label,
Yeah.
because I think that the biggest problem with this is it's the fact that these are all in the Assassin's Creed brand, the Assassin's Creed series, which I know sells, but the question is how much of that can you push out in a few years and still sell? And the series has had its ups and downs. People, I think that Ubisoft swears by it because they've had issues with their other franchises, but there are a lot of people in the gaming space who are also frustrated with Assassin's Creed. They're frustrated with the idea that Assassin's Creed and Just Dance are all that Ubisoft wants to make now, pushing into that like free to play first person shooter type realm.
Yeah.
That kind of thing with X Defiant.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it seems to me like people are kind of frustrated with Ubisoft. Now, I know what you said is true. If these settings are different enough, and these games are different enough, that could absolutely help them. Like that could bring some new lifeblood into the series and say, okay, well, not everything has to be the same. Something that we've said for years. You can make your huge RPGs. You could also make your classic style games. You could make a game right now like Assassin's Creed 2, almost a spiritual successor to that game with new characters. And you could also make alongside it a game that's like Valhalla. As long as you have enough developers, enough time, and enough passion put into it, you can do that. But this series has lost a lot of its direction. And I do think that's something that people have noticed. Things like the modern day story being so weird now and kind of forgotten about in many ways. Things like, Invictus, which we'll talk about, things like an app thing. There's just a lot of what ifs around this series right now. And Ubisoft's stock doing so poorly, I'm just not really sure what to expect out of this game. And really out of any of them, I think Shadows will sell either way. I think the AC4 thing we'll talk about eventually will sell either way, but this is more experimental.
Exactly. No, I agree with you. I think this one's going to be so out of left field that it's very potentially it could do either. Like it might surprise people. It might be like an okay thing, but it's just like not enough to like push it. And maybe that's why it's labeled Assassin's Creed, right? Where it might just be some middling thing and Assassin's Creed's attached, so it might like get it some extra sales or whatever. But I honestly, again, like in terms of all of them, I actually am the most excited by probably like a mile until we see it. Then maybe it'll change. But for right now, definitely Hexe is my number one. Okay, probably my least anticipated. Not that I hate it, it's just that it's not my thing, so I won't spend much time on it. Assassin's Creed Jade, right? So mobile. That's kind of where it ends. I mean, we've seen leaked things on it. I remember like there was actually quite a few leaked things. They've shown gameplay. Like it looks fine. I don't play games on my phone, but if you were to put Assassin's Creed onto a phone, this looks like what it would look like. So it doesn't look bad or anything. It's just not something I would experience. But I guess in terms of like the Ubisoft thing, I do think it's probably smart. Like if you can get an extra couple thousand people or whatever through mobile, right, to play it and then jump over to a system one, I guess that makes sense for it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that one.
My thoughts on this one are that I'm a little frustrated that China is being revisited as a mobile game, but I also understand that the mobile games market in China is massive. So I understand why they're doing that. Like it makes sense, like if you do this game right, you are able to release it in China as well, which, obviously has a huge population and also a huge gaming and movie market. It's just you have to play by their rules when you release there. So that's something I think they have to remember. If you're able to do that, it's potentially a lot of money. Now, my frustration is you already have Chinese assassins from the past that I feel like they could do a lot more with, like Xiao Jun, that I really would have loved to have seen a full-on console and PC game of. And I guess for me, it's one of those things where I will try it, but I worry about the game preservation aspect of it, which you've mentioned before with games. It's why we talk physical versus digital. When will this be delisted? When will they kill this game off? They did it already with their old multiplayers and stuff, which were online only. So those are the kinds of things I worry about going into Jade. I don't think Jade will have any problem getting a player base. But then the question is, how microtransaction-y is it? When does it get killed? When does it get delisted? Those are the kinds of things I think about going into it, and just the potential of a full 3D console and PC Assassin's Creed China game. That is a little bit of a bummer to me, but maybe if this does really well, it's a proof of concept that people are interested in the China setting, and they will do that. I don't really know. That's just kind of my thoughts on it. Is it could be good, but like I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the potential of like what I wish that it was. So that's kind of where I fall on it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair, and maybe they see it and they say that's something that works, so we'll kind of hold on to it, and that'll be another thing that I want to hit on before we get to these last two. These are kind of the next 5 roughly. The thing is, there's really no game here, and even the games we're about to talk about, there's no game like Shadows. So when I think of like the next 10, we know the 5. I imagine game number 6 is that next big, huge 100-hour type game that we don't really know too much about. So just to kind of throw in like an honorable mention in a 6th game. Okay, we got Invictus, which we'll do first, and then we have that the great remake that we'll end it with. So Invictus is pretty much their attempt to go back into the multiplayer. We don't know too much about it. I think there was another one kind of talked about of like a battle royale type situation. I don't think that's the same thing, or maybe that's part of it. But I know you personally, Jay, are a big fan of the multiplayer. You did like a kind of going away party for the old multiplayer games, and if I had Back to the Past at the time, I absolutely would have done the exact same thing. So I'm a fan too. I mean, that really, I don't know if it elevated it, but it was just a really cool like second thing to do once you play these really good, I think kind of the peak of the story and the characters of AC. Then you had the multiplayer that I think did really, really well, and it was just fun. It was just one of those. Dead Space had the multiplayer, Uncharted, Batman, Arkham Origins, like all these had pretty okay multiplayers, and I think Assassin's Creed was one of the better ones. So this is one that, again, the rumor is next year is Shadows, potentially this multiplayer, and Hexe at the end of the year. So that's kind of like the light rumor. Those things can move and whatnot, but what do you think about the multiplayer?
This is a weird one for me. Yeah, I did do kind of a going away talking about it. I've done a couple retrospectives. I'm actually, not to self-promote here, going to do a couple more because I have a ton of footage that I recorded before they shut down. I was going to go through
footage. It's rare.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go through kind of each one, that's left. But for me, this is frustrating in a way, but also cool. When I look at this, they already shut down their old multiplayers. There was canon lore, I know as the only person who cares about that right now, that was to the modern day story, something that I also think AC has kind of lost the plot on a little bit, that was in there. There was stuff like cutscenes with Warren Vidic. There was cutscenes that were kind of talking about what was going on inside of Abstergo. There was stuff with the hacking group Erudido. And there was a lot of that stuff that got lost when they removed their original multiplayer. So for me, I'm kind of wondering how this is going to be handled. I know there's supposedly 2 multiplayer projects in the books in development, but it's all leaks and speculation. And I think you mentioned the Battle Royale. One of them is supposed to be Fall Guys inspired. Yeah. I don't know like how that would work. Do you know anything about that? Because that's what's weird to me about this topic.
So that one's like, I think that's the one I was talking about. So I think I messed up with the Battle Royale. So that one was like, it's I think the rumor was like 15 or so players, and you basically do tasks. Like the Fall Guys thing, I think they said was taken out of context kind of originally. So it'd be rounds, like Fall Guys is rounds, right? So you have a round 1, there's 15 of you, you perform a task, and then say the bottom 5 that don't do it, they fall out. Then you do round 2. Now you do a different series of things, and then you keep going until you get a winner. I honestly like that a lot, and I think that could be a lot of fun. Now, I don't know if that's part of Invictus, because Invictus always sounded like Assassin's Creed, like Brotherhood, like that that kind of like the OG. It sounded like it was that. So I don't know if this is like a spin-off or if there's literally 2 multiplayer games or they're both the same thing. But I the Fall Guys thing, I like that idea, to be honest with you.
I think it's very neat. I think it is what would you say, like, unique, and
Yeah.
that's something you pointed out, because I think that I talked about this, too, with you and probably on my own too, about how I personally think this is too much Assassin's Creed just in general. That's just me.
Yeah.
But the reason that I feel that way is because I think that despite the amount of Ubisoft teams there are, I think you need time, and I've seen a decline, I would say, of their other franchises, like interest in them or them morphing into other things. Rainbow Six is something totally different. Ghost Recon, totally different. Splinter Cell isn't even made anymore, and there's the supposed reboot. Who knows what'll happen with that? My point is that Ubisoft has kind of dropped the ball on a lot of franchises, Rayman. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm feeling the same way about a lot of these as I've told you I feel about PlayStation, where I say this is no fault of these games, but I do wish that we could get some of these games and also some of these other things that Ubisoft was known for. And I've noticed a growing frustration with Ubisoft as a company about that. And so my thing is, if you're releasing this many games, this is kind of where I'm falling on Invictus, and then I'll throw it back to you. If you're releasing this many games and you're going to maybe be releasing multiple multiplayer components that you've already lost goodwill for shutting down the old ones as well, and then you're also dropping all those other series, I guess I'm wondering at what point you can hit a wall. At what point Assassin's Creed is on a box and you will have that built-in sale, but how many people will just say, oh, I remember when they used to make other things, and not buy it? I guess that's kind of my wondering about these games, and that's kind of what I wonder as we start to hit game 4, 5, 6, 7, in this short multiple year span, is how much you can put out before people say, hey, I remember when Ubisoft made Splinter Cell.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not really into this. I miss that. And I do kind of wonder if that negative public image is going to affect any of these Assassin's Creed games, or if they're just so big that it won't. I don't know. I'm curious what you think about that too.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it's going to be shown off in shadows. Like, that's going to be the prove it thing for me because it's so loud. And again, I'm not. There's been so many freaking opinions. I don't want to get into it, but when it comes to shadows, like, the sales are the most. Besides the game itself, the sales are going to be really interesting because it's like, okay, did it do anything? Right? Does it sell like a natural AC game where it just always sells good? Even the bad ones, like, well, not bad in terms of quality, bad in terms of sales. Syndicate, Rogue, etc. Like, those are. A lot of studios would probably want their games to sell as good as those games, right? It's just for Ubisoft it didn't do as well. So Shadows, I think it all kind of depends on, and then my opinion would kind of morph, right? Because it's like, if everything that happened to Shadows has happened and nothing changed sales-wise, then I think people will buy every single one of these. You know what I mean? I think that's just, people do that. And that's okay. Like, if you are that, you are. If you're not, whatever. But I feel like that's just what it would prove to me. If Shadows sells like half as well as they want it to, then they have a huge issue, right? Because it's like, okay, just doing 10 AC games is not guaranteed you sell 10 AC games, right? It just means you put them out. So that, I think it all rests on Shadows, and then it would kind of compound as it goes. And that brings us to maybe the most unwanted, whatever you want to call it, in Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake, right? So this is the one that's not confirmed, right? This is one that's just solely rumors, but it's been Tom Henderson has been the one, and he's about the best leaker out there besides Jason Schreier. I like Black Flag. I can understand the Skull and Bones team doing it because they're at least used to pirates and ships and things like that. But I do think it's probably still too soon. I think you could remake Assassin's Creed 1, which is in desperate need of a remake, I believe. And that's pretty much my main hang-up. I think it actually will be quite good. I feel like the remake aspect of it would also be quite good. And this is another game that's coming out probably in the next 2 years. Like, you're going to get really the 5 we mentioned. You're going to get by the end of like 2026. So, that's kind of my main thing on Black Flag is like, I'll take it. It'll probably be good because I like Black Flag. I love the ship stuff. It's one of the best pirate games, if not the best pirate game of all time. But I think Assassin's Creed 1 is just kind of in limbo, in a bad state. I would say not like an amazing state. And I think that one deserves to be remade over it. So what do you think, Jay?
I think that Assassin's Creed 1 is a very weird situation where I agree that it definitely, like, I just replayed through this game recently. I think it's a very good game. I think that it's one of those things where I could see it getting remade though, and also Ubisoft dropping the ball, whereas because it would take a lot more to revitalize that game. I think with Assassin's Creed 1, you would need to do a lot more to make it hit the point that people would be happy with now. And you'd also probably want to make the combat more like the original. You know, you'd want to make or the original style. And I wonder, one, are they really capable of doing that anymore? They tried a little bit with Mirage, but they were stuck on the RPG engine. So I wonder how that will affect them.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. I'm worried about remaking Assassin's Creeds if they understand the gameplay style that people enjoyed, because they haven't produced that gameplay style since Syndicate. So that's kind of what concerns me with these remakes is, do they still understand why those did so well and what people loved about them?
Yep. No, that's a good point. Just even their experience, right? Like so much of the last 7-8 years has been this new RPG style, which and that's always been a kind of a roadblock. Like I get it. I get why people like it, and a lot of people like it. In fact, these games have sold extremely well, like Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla. And I do think there's severe flaws in the old combat. Like I replayed Assassin's Creed 2 a few months ago. Like yeah, it's the gameplay has not aged as well as I thought it did. So I get it, but also it's going back in a time capsule, right? Like that is Assassin's Creed 2. I'm not trading it. That is Assassin's Creed 1. Like you're gonna have, I mean, enemies maybe can like attack you faster, but like the general combat is gonna still be the same, right? You can't RPG-ify it, right? That's not gonna really work. So I honestly don't think they would do that. I do agree with you that it would be, there's more work involved in remaking a game from '07 than Black Flag and whenever 2013, right? So it would take more to actually be able to remake an older game. So that's maybe it's just expenses. Maybe Ubisoft doesn't care about anything pre Assassin's Creed Black Flag. That was a new era kind of for Assassin's Creed in general, right? Like after 3. So maybe that was like their line of thinking. Or to be honest, it's probably just to give that studio something to do, because they do the ship combat, right? Like they know that stuff. So there's no ships in 1. So maybe that's like that's what's going on there. So any last thoughts about these 5 or anything you want to say?
Yeah, my one last thought I did want to say was something we've talked about before. I think a lot of the problems around Black Flag Remake could have been avoided along with Skull and Bones. So I should say potential problems with Black Flag's remake, along with the Skull and Bones issues that Ubisoft did have, getting kind of lambasted for that game. If they had just been willing to make a spiritual successor to AC4, you know, similar style, you can't RPGify it, but maybe bigger world, better graphics, better frame rate. Obviously, now it works fine, but when it came out, you know, it wasn't as steady as it is now. You know, things like that where you kind of nailed down some of those things that you can expand on while keeping that core gameplay loop mostly the same, having more cosmetics, maybe even more customization. I mean, hey, even if you wanted to, you could have done Skull and Bones and just had it be a multiplayer Assassin's Creed pirate game as well, where you build your own crew, you know, you have your own costumes, it ties into that world. Like that right there is something where you could have done an Assassin's Creed multiplayer or single player, and people would have bought it immediately. Because for a lot of people, like, I know that you know this, but I don't know how many people other than us, you know this. Maybe they do. There is a subset of fans that are only Assassin's Creed 4 fans.
Yeah.
That is their Assassin's Creed. Like, it is a pirate game to them.
Yeah.
They loved that. We do not get games like that. If you go and look for pirate games, they exist, but on that scale, AAA single player type thing, there's not that many. You know, and even with online games, Pirates of the Caribbean Online, that was its own thing, but that's been gone and then revived as a fan game, obviously. It's like there's a niche for pirate games. And I think that Ubisoft thought that they could just fill that niche by making Skull and Bones just off of their name. And I don't think they understood why people loved Assassin's Creed 4 that much. That's what worries me about the remake, because I think if they did, I don't think Skull and Bones would have launched as what it was. So that's kind of my final thing with this, not to be negative about every single one of these. Like, all of these could come out and be good. It's just that when I'm looking at what Ubisoft is doing and I'm looking at how Skull and Bones launched, I'm thinking, okay, well, you didn't really understand. Like, I don't think you really got it. for why AC4 landed. It wasn't just because it was a pirate game, it was because of what the game actually contained as well as narrative, story, gameplay loop, all of that stuff. It could have been translated to multiplayer if you wanted, it could have been another single player game. I don't really think they landed on either of them. And that's an example right there of they pulled that Assassin's Creed branding right out of it. And then it just kind of is a game nobody talks about except, haha, look at this game. It's kind of dumb. Like people just, they take shots at it. It's a meme. It's not a game that people take seriously. I think that kind of worries me when it comes to Pirates and Assassin's Creed is, will Ubisoft look back and say, here's why AC4 landed, here's why Skull and Bones didn't? Are they going to learn that lesson or are they not? That's just my question, because if they do, I think that they could do something really cool with an AC4 remake.
This game might not have as good of ship combat as Black Flag, but I do think Like a Dragon, Pirate in Hawaii is going to be the greatest pirate game we've ever seen in our lives in just a few short months. So that's our thoughts on the upcoming Assassin's Creed games. You guys let us know in the comments. Are there any you're looking forward to? Any that you're hating? Anything like that? Let us know in the comments. And I'm sure both of us, both channels, actually maybe even multiple channels from Jay, will be covering these AC games as they come. Again, I want to thank Jay for stopping by the channel. All his links are going to be in the description if you guys want to check out any of his channels. And Jay, thanks for stopping by.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I look forward to it. I know you're going to be on some videos on my channels too, and we're just going to kind of pop back and forth, do this when we can on different channels depending on our schedules, and have a fun time. So I appreciate that.
Indeed. We are back, and we hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll talk to you all in the next one.